Hey guys, got a couple of questions that I get asked often regarding what's a good gross sales per hour, Zane? I get this question a lot because I talk about gross sales per hour. A good gross sales per hour, just off the top of my head, based on industry standards, I would say at least $300, but it could be slightly higher to be considered good. It could be a $330 for you or $350. I trimmed my beard today and I look like a spring chicken, so don't make any comments about that. But anyway, so the reason I say 300 up or down is based off of your market. It's based off of your overhead and how many hours you're pulling in a shop. So if you have a higher overhead, if your overhead cost per hour is like 100 something plus, $100 an hour or more. By the way, that's your total overhead divided by your total hours produced. That should give you that ouch, what they call it, OHCH. That number is what you have to do per hour in gross profit in order to pay your bills. But with the gross sales per hour, you're like, well, why do we focus on gross sales per hour? Well, I'll tell you a couple of reasons why I like gross sales per hour as the best metric. The number one is the simplest one, so you don't have to do much math. You can actually use your tech metric to know what your gross sales per hour is, because all it is your gross sales divided by your gross hours, your total hours. Well, why does that metric matter? And a lot of guys focus on the effective labor rate, they focus on door rate, the labor rates, and I think labor rates are kind of a thing of the past because we're quoting the customer by the total job. All the customer cares about is what they paid for the job. They don't care about your labor rate. If I'm going to go in and pay for a service, all I care is what it costs me. I don't care what they charge an hour for labor, because that's only half the story. The other half of the story is, well, how much part are they selling me and how much are they marking up that part? So a lot of industry guys, ex-technicians, they get hung up on, well, I want my door rate to be high. Okay, but you don't have a parts matrix, right? You're not even marking up parts, or you're not even selling parts, which is a huge one. I see a lot of this happening where a car comes in and they will charge $180 an hour to change the water pump, but then that's all they'll sell is the water pump. They don't sell the coolant service, they don't sell the thermostat, they don't sell any hoses, they don't sell the coolant temp sensor, they don't diag the engine light to make sure that the coolant light's not coming on, etc. Right? I'm not a tech, but I know from building enough auto repair and a lot of technicians who've worked with me to say, Zane, to do the job right, we need to be able to get all these other items at least checked out, and if anything doesn't look good, we should change it with this water pump because it's going to come back. And you can agree or disagree if you're a technician on this. I've never had a technician disagree with me on the fact that if you do a water pump, you should check the whole cooling system. But not only do you get the customer to have a car fixed right, you also are able to sell more parts without necessarily selling more labor. So a great example of this would be a car comes in for a water pump, you just sell water pump, we sell the water pump, and we just sell coolant flush. Well, we only bill a half hour for the coolant flush, but we charge $250 an hour. Well, let's do the math on that. $250 divided by 0.5, that's $500, which is what you actually charge an hour for that $250 service, because you charge a half hour to get $250. Now, if you did that, and you, for the first, for the water pump, say it's $600 and it was 2 hours. So that's $300 an hour is GSPH. But wait a minute, you just added $250 and now you only went up by a half hour. So you see what that does to your gross sales per hour? It shoots that gross sales per hour up. That is the total price that your customer pays per hour in your shop. That's your total price. That's how expensive you are based on the gross sales per hour, not off of your ELR, not off your door rate, because those things are only a quarter of the story. The other 3/4 of the story is, are you running a labor matrix? That's, well, okay, you might be 150 for the first hour, but you might be 170 for the second hour, because labor matrices, they go up with how many hours. The third thing would be, how much parts are you selling? Are you selling 3 parts for every hour you sell? Because that's going to impact how much your customer pays per hour, right? And then the final, which is a parts matrix, how aggressive are you marking up those parts? That's a 4-pronged thing, guys. Pricing is just not about, well, I'm going to increase my door rate. Okay, well, 25% of the way there. What about the other 75%? So that's why I focus on gross sales per hour, because it tells you the whole complete story of how expensive you are as a shop. And I have found that the easiest way to mark up your value to the customer is to just sell more parts Because what happens is not only are you fixing the whole problem when you do that, you're also able to increase that GSPH, which alternatively also increases your total sales without necessarily what? Selling more labor, hiring more technicians, or getting more lifts in your shop. Those are the things that everybody complains about. I need more lifts, I need more technicians, my door rate's not high enough. It's like, guys, you don't have to do any of those things in order to actually get more gross sales. And I mean, you can, but I think that's a hard one. It's a harder way to run your shop. So anyway, going back to the original query, if you're running a $250 gross sales per hour in 2024, you are undercutting yourself. It's a very rare market, probably if you're out in the country where the median household income is $22,000 and you could buy a nice house for $200,000, then sure, maybe 250 is a great number for you to run at gross sales per hour. Anywhere in any metropolitan in the United States that I know of, especially if you're in like a busier metro like Detroit, Chicago, Tennessee, right, Nashville, Los Angeles, etc. Man, you can't be under $300 an hour. You can't be. You're gonna lose your shirt. And not only are you gonna lose your shirt, you're probably not even doing the repairs right because you're just selling one item at a time. And maybe you're not marking up the parts right. But primarily what I see is a lot of technicians. If you look at technician owners, is when you look at your total sales and then you look at the breakdown of your total sales at the end of the week, at the end of the month, look at how many parts you sold and look at how many labors you sold in dollars. Like if you did $100,000 in revenue, you should have at least $55,000 in parts sales and $45,000 in labor sales. If it's the other way around, you are running it on hard mode. You're not only running it on hard mode, you're actually setting up the game for you to not succeed, because you're gonna have to hire more technicians and you're probably not even getting all those parts that you should be for every job. So I hope that's helpful, guys. Again, $300 GSPH minimum is what I would say. Most of the best operators I know in this country, they're running 350 plus. And not only are they making more money for themselves and their teams, they're also doing good work for their customers. And generally, you will see that those shops actually have really good reviews because they're getting the whole job done and customers aren't coming back in 3 months saying, you did a water pump and I still have a coolant leak and I came to you for a coolant leak. And you're like, well, yeah, but now that's the thermostat. Dude, the customer doesn't care. They paid you for a coolant leak repair and you didn't fix their coolant as far as they're concerned. The same goes for brakes, the same goes for misfires. If you do a tune-up, you got to do all the coils if they're original and the car's got a bunch of miles on it. If you're like, no, I don't want to make that decision for the customer, dude, come on. Like, you guys got to get better than that, man. I'm sorry. Like, the game, again, I'm not saying I've done it wrong for many years, but I've learned in the last 50 years that, guys, the 18 years of doing this, the customer expects you to do the job right the first time. That's never going to change in any service industry. That's why you got to do the whole system to make sure that they don't come back. And if they don't want to pay, then that's fine. Get a declined on there. But most of you guys aren't even putting that crap on the estimate. And when you do that, you are thinking with your pocket instead of making sure that you do your job as a professional. Right? So that's the same analogy. I give you a lot more analogies of doctors doing surgery, and if they're like, well, this patient can't afford this extra implant, so I'm just gonna leave the bad one in there, they'll leave the bad bone in there. Dude, come on, doctors did that, they would probably go to jail. And and when we do that, luckily we don't go to jail, but we don't get paid, right? When they come back, you're gonna do that work for free. So I hope I made myself clear. $300 GSPH, you should be running a 55% parts to labor margin in terms of how much rate the split. If you have $100,000 in sales, once again, $55,000 of that sales should come from parts. You should be selling all the additional items, or at least checking them to make sure they're okay. Do not focus on just increasing your door rate. Also increase the amount of parts you're selling, the price matrix, the parts matrix you're running, and a labor matrix. Door rate is only 25% of the story. And if you do these things, I promise you, not only will you run a smoother shop because you have more parts done and the customers won't come back complaining about things that they should have had the first time, you'll also make more money for your team, and it'll be a lot easier than just, finding more and more technicians and lifts. Please, if you're at $250 an hour GSPH or lower, stop complaining about technicians. It's not your techs, it's your sales team, and it's your inspection process. I hope that's helpful.